Hi, folks. A very warm welcome to season 4, episode 16 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. Today, we are talking about how to heal anxious attachment. And I have a wonderful guest here, Valerie Rubin, who is going to join me for what's going to be a really insightful conversation. If you've checked out the previous couple of podcasts, I've been talking about understanding attachment styles and also how self-worth plays into going after unavailable men. We have the expert on both of these things here. So, Valerie Rubin is a trauma-informed somatic coach, a podcast host, and an anxious attachment specialist who helps people transform love from a source of anxiety into a sanctuary of safety. As the founder of Freedom from Anxious Attachment Blueprint and host of the Anxiety Recovery podcast, she guides clients to heal anxious attachment at the root by blending somatic therapy, brain spotting, and inner child healing. Valerie's work is where science meets soul, helping people rewire their nervous systems, release survival patterns, and finally feel safe to receive the love they've always longed for. Welcome to the podcast, Valerie.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Emma. I'm just so excited to be here and just share everything about anxious attachment and just dive super deep today.
Brilliant. Love it. I'm going to start by asking you to kick us off. Can you share what it means to have an anxious attachment style and how somebody might recognize that this is how they relate? Because I can
hmm
say that until I started doing a bit of research into this, I had no idea about all of these things. And I'm coaching clients who are showing all of the signs and symptoms of anxious attachment, and it's a conversation that's really important to have. So the floor is yours.
hmm Wonderful. So, just some ways that you can start to spot it is looking at, okay, a lot of beliefs that my clients have that really show, okay, I have an anxious attachment, not feeling good enough. A lot of like comparison. If you're dating someone, you're always thinking, are they going to find someone more interesting? Are they going to find someone better than me? A lot of jealousy, struggling with trusting themselves or others, a big fear of abandonment, fearing that the closest people to them will leave, feeling some other aspects of anxious attachment is like reassurance seeking, but ultimately attachment styles are not fixed. They can be healed, they can be worked through. Your attachment style is really it's based on the blueprint of your caregivers and how they related to you. And so if you had emotionally unavailable or inconsistent caregiving growing up, you're going to feel hypervigilant and your nervous system never learned how to self-soothe. So then it becomes externalized, and we need other to self-regulate. So this also looks like codependency. A lot of my clients describe it as if my partner is safe, then I'm safe. And so that's really how you can start to notice, am I anxiously attached? But really, a lot of people like your dominant nervous system state, like if you're in fight or flight, if you're anxious chronically, most likely you have an anxious attachment style. So those are just some key markers here.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. So I think to reiterate for anybody who's just coming to this podcast, we have essentially three attachment styles: secure, which is it doesn't really warrant a podcast because if you're securely attached, you're probably quite happy in your relationships and how you relate to people. Anxious, which is obviously what we're talking about, because I think it's a very common one, especially for women, and avoidant. So I wonder, I'm interested how many people there are out there helping avoidant people heal that, because I think
hmm
avoidant attachment style is essentially valuing your independence and keeping people at arm's length.
Mm.
You're saying that attachment styles change, and I can say that mine has changed over time. I used to be very anxiously attached, and I think I've swerved through to being almost a bit avoidant now.
hmm
So, which is not it's not great. So there's work for me to do there, but I think it's just testimony to how you can heal it and change it. And I think it is quite dependent on the partner you have. And I know that we're going to talk more about this, but anxiously attached people tend to end up with avoidant people, which just
Yeah.
fuels the cycle of insecurity and hypervigilance and all of the unsettled, like you've said, being in that flight nervous system response, which is just horrible for people.
Yeah, and just to like say as well, avoidant and like, okay, adding on to your point, there's another attachment style called disorganized attachment. And so this looks like kind of like a combo of anxious and avoidant parts. It's like I crave closeness, but closeness also is a threat to my nervous system. So that can look a lot like push and pull dynamics in relationships. And I know a lot of people who maybe they've grown up and they have more of an anxious attachment, and then they become more avoidant leaning or avoidantly attached because of other relationship trauma. And we've learned as a conditioned response, it's safer to close my heart. It's been too much being in this anxiety. I'm just going to shut everything down. And a lot of people in my space who help people with anxious attachment or people who struggle with anxious attachment, and this was myself as well. I like to share this openly. Like, I used to be someone who would point and blame someone who was like avoidant leaning, when in reality, avoidantly attached people and anxiously attached people, it's the same core fears. It's just different coping mechanisms. It's
Yeah.
the same core fear of abandonment. It just looks very differently. But
Mm.
really, with anxiously attached people, they're hyper attuned and hyper available to other and emotionally unavailable to themselves. And so this is why they can be one of the reasons why they can be so magnetized toward people who are avoidantly attached. And so it's just like we're all human just navigating shit for the first time. And if you're listening to this, I know you are on the journey of self growth, of development, of healing. And so if you resonate with avoidant attachment or anxious attachment, just know that your nervous system is beautifully designed and working perfectly based on everything that you've gone through. And so
Yeah.
just being gentle with yourself. Like these are just survival strategies that you learned to protect yourself and protect your heart from being hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so interesting too that you brought the two attachment styles are doing the same thing, but I think
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately on the surface of it, an avoidant attachment looks like they've got their shit together way more than an anxiously attached person. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's quite a difficult one. I've got a couple of coaching clients who were very anxiously attached, and they're kind of reaching out and the constant reassurance behavior is a lot. And they're aware of
Mm-hmm.
it, but it's like, oh, it's so hard to control it. Whereas I think when you're avoidant, you can just kind of, as somebody who sort of is my go-to, is you can just kind of shut the door on it and kind of almost compartmentalize it a little bit. So,
Yes, yes. And just to like reframe like reassurance seeking, because that was a pattern of myself. And when I'm triggered, I can definitely notice those parts coming up.
yeah,
Like people talk about chasing or
yeah,
seeking reassurance like it's a negative thing, but I want to reframe it in a nervous system, like trauma informed way. Chasing and seeking reassurance is just a sign, hey, my nervous system is dysregulated. I
yeah,
am not in the capacity to regulate myself. So I need something outside of me. So it's like, wow, can we have so much compassion for
yeah,
this part of yourself that feels like, wow, I must feel really unsafe in my body to feel the need to reassurance seek and to chase something outside of me. And that's just just showing my I never had internal safety, so I need it externally. And when we start to build those skills of helping the body to feel safe on a
mm,
physiological level, that's when those parts are going to be able to soften and you're going to be able to rely on them less for your own source of safety.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of the stuff that you're talking with nervous system regulation, it's so important. And I think the first port of call with this is just that awareness of, oh, I'm doing that behavior again, and I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
it because I'm seeking safety. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's an unconscious behavior pattern. And I think 50, like I said, 50% of the battle is recognizing it. Because when you recognize it, you can change it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to
Hmm.
know how you got into this work and what brought you, because I know you're very well qualified with all sorts of things. So I'm very
Thank
interested as
you.
how you've kind of steered into anxious attachment work.
Yeah, so I'll say like two different answers to that because it's kind of layered for me. So the
Hmm.
professional answer of like in my professional life. So I was working, like I started off working with clients who were just chronically anxious or had generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD and or CBTSD. And clients who weren't getting results were stuck in trauma bonded relationships, toxic relationships, or they were just chronically triggered by their partner. And so
Mm.
as I continued doing more research about it, it was more because their anxious attachment was not worked through. Like how you relate to your caregivers, like that's a missing piece. And so for me, before that, so that's like the professional piece to it. And then my personal life, it got to a point where I was very chronically anxious. I was doing all the right things. I was, seeing a talk therapist for over 4 years. I was doing yoga every day, meditating every day. I even changed my diet. I even went on medication. No relief whatsoever. And it was starting to impact my physiology and my body. I had deep cystic acne. I mean, I'm not sure if this is a video podcast, but I do have makeup on, but like there was no cystic acne
You look
anymore.
fabulous.
Thank you. I had deep chronic pain. It started with chronic headaches, chronic neck pain. It went into, my stomach. I had symptoms of IBS. I had chronic back pain, leg pain, and I had all the symptoms of fibromyalgia. And I had them for 6 years, and it was just progressively getting worse. And so then once I started to discover hypnotherapy and somatic therapy, that's what started to actually move the needle forward for me. And the chronic pain went away in 6 months, and the chronic debilitating anxiety I was experiencing was able to lessen very significantly, and it was became much more manageable. But then like the kicker was, and how I really shifted into anxious attachment was even after doing all of that work of rewiring my nervous system, feeling safe in my body, I never truly was safe in a relational way. And I ended up getting into a trauma bonded relationship. And so that's what really shifted me into the work of anxious attachment because I saw how unhealed mine was. And it's really apparent. And people will tell me a lot. I'll get messages frequently like, oh, I wasn't anxious until this avoidant showed up, or I got into this narcissistic relationship. But that's just like putting all your power into someone else when it was probably just dormant. Like there was no trigger for that. Like I definitely still had an anxious attachment. It just wasn't being triggered because I was single. And so a lot of people will say things like that. Um, so that's really how I got into the anxious attachment space, both on the professional level and personal level.
Yeah, and I suspected as much. I just wanted to, was just curious because I think often when in doing very deep work like this, because this is very deep work with people, I think it's so important when you're picking somebody to work with that they've walked through the fire that you are walking, they're going to
Yeah.
walk you with.
Yeah.
Because I think there's having a clinical understanding of it and there's having an actual embodied understanding of it, which is
Very different
two
things.
very
Very
different
different
things.
things.
But I love that you've,
Yes.
I don't want to bash talk therapy because it has its place. I do have a podcast episode all about why it doesn't work. Um, I think talk therapy has a space following on
Hmm.
from very acute things that have happened that you just need to verbalize and process through. But my experience has been that going to talk therapy week on week on week on week and talking about the same thing over and over and over again, unless you've got a really skilled therapist, you actually just keeping everything front of mind and you're not actually allowing anything to heal, you're not putting anything down, you're not moving past anything because we're just going to keep talking about it and stirring it all up. And then, oh, your 50 minutes is up. See ya.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought this up because trauma is physiological.
Yep.
We cannot talk our way out of an anxious response or out of a trauma response. And
Mm.
so and our body, when we're experiencing anxiety or these anxious attachment symptoms, our body is reliving the past. We're acting from a young part. And so what somatic therapy and somatic healing helps you to do is timestamp those past traumatic memories in the past, and it helps to complete that trauma cycle and end that loop so that our body, not just our mind, our body knows, hey, the past is actually over. The trauma is done now. I am safe now. And a lot of my clients describe it as, I finally feel like a sense of relief in my body. I finally am repulsed by that emotionally unavailable partner. I wouldn't even go near them. It's so healing and beautiful to witness people actually be able to take a deep breath, not be as triggered by the things that typically trigger them, not feel as reactive. And this is what somatic therapy helps you to do. And talk therapy is just going to re-traumatize you if you have CBTSD or anxious attachment. But I will say, I think if you've never done therapy, I think, maybe just understanding, hey, these are my family dynamics. It's a great like first step, but it should not stop there because we need to work with what's in the body and what's in here.
Yeah.
And I'm touching my chest for those listening to the audio.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I'm going to, I want you to talk a bit more about that process for people who are listening and going, "Ooh, what's somatic therapy?" I did, a family constellations day a few weeks
Mm,
ago, which,
okay.
which
I
is,
have done that
yeah,
before.
which blew my mind. So I do shamanic work. So I find shamanic journey work super useful for kind of uncovering beliefs, and it pulls in ancestral stuff. But we had this whole day, and there were five of us doing different constellations for ourselves. And it's amazing how when you go back to the energetics of trauma and you go back to the ancestral root of things, and you almost start to get a little bit of an understanding of why you're carrying something, and that you can also give it back to the people for whom you are also carrying it. It's amazing the
Mm-hmm.
sense of relief that you get. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons I've kind of also gone down this path is I did this constellation. Everything always lines up synchronously with the universe. And we had this whole day where four out of the five constellations were all dealing with unavailable men.
Stop.
Yep, no,
That makes
no,
sense.
yeah, yeah. So the whole
Yeah.
everybody that's what everybody had their own. Four out of the five of us
Yeah.
had their own version of
Mm-hmm.
dealing with unavailable stuff. And a lot of it, without giving any information away, a lot of it went back to people's childhood. So it's
Yeah.
like you've touched on it's the imprinting with caregivers, very
Mm-hmm.
traumatic childhoods that people are just carrying this stuff, and it's continuing until you get
Mm-hmm.
into your 40s, your 50s, and you go, oh God, I can't stand this anymore.
Yeah.
And then you start to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I've digressed slightly with that, but it does, but it falls
No.
into, because I know you do
Yeah.
IFS as well. So it falls into that
Yes.
parts work and
Yeah.
talking to younger parts of yourself and processing stuff through. And I think
Yeah.
talk therapy can't get to that.
Correct. It literally can't get to the part of the brain that narcissistic abuse or emotional trauma has touched.
Yep.
And so I'm so glad you brought up ancestral healing because that's what a lot of anxious attachment is. And I want to share like something vulnerable and like give an example of brain spotting because that's one of the modalities that I specialize in, which is a somatic therapy, body-based therapy. And so for me, I am Jewish. I like to openly share that. And so 98% of my family passed away in the Holocaust. So on October 23rd, I think it's been 2 years ago since when the war started. When the war started in Israel, I started having this fear of being Jewish. I would be in my apartment and like doors would close, and I would have this huge fear that Nazis are going to kill me. That sounds super irrational, right? I'm Valerie Rubin. It was 2023 at that time. Like, we are not in the Holocaust age. But with the war happening in Israel, it triggered
Yep.
ancestral trauma.
Yep.
And so what ended up happening is I did a brain spotting session. And so, what brain spotting essentially helps you do is where you look affects how your nervous system feels. So, what brain spotting does is it helps you to locate where your trauma memories are stored in your visual field and helps you to process them and release them through the body. So, what it actually looked like is I felt a lot of fear in my chest. I found a spot in my visual field that I found where the trauma was located. But essentially that means the anxiety was amplified when I looked at this spot. And then I had different visuals when I was in this brain spotting session where I was seeing myself rescue all of my family members. So, to give some context, my great grandfather, he was one of 11 children. Only him and his one sibling survived. I literally unconsciously, with my eyes open, imagined I was rescuing all of these people. We were running, we were escaping, and I felt this deep sense of unconditional love that I've never felt before, radiating through my heart, radiating through my body, this deep connection with my great grandfather. And ever since then, it's like imprinted in my nervous system that he is here with me.
Yeah.
And it was just like one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced. And I've never felt that way or that fear ever again. And I share openly on my podcast and on other people's podcasts that I am Jewish and about this experience and the
Mm.
power of brain spotting and somatic therapy because it's getting into those deep rooted patterns. And
Yeah.
it's like it could have gone even deeper than the Holocaust, what I was processing. It could be even past things, even
Yeah.
deeper. So it just shows that it's all in the body. Like our cells, our DNA are all impacted by trauma. And I couldn't have just talked my way out of this fear of being Jewish. I knew it was irrational, but it did not matter to my nervous system. And that's what a lot of people miss. And they will shame themselves and say, I know my partner is just on a business trip, but I'm still anxious. I feel like he's going to find someone else. I feel like I'm going to die. That's coming from either ancestral trauma or a young part of you that is terrified of being alone. It's coming
Hmm.
like any big reaction we have to something is not coming from our true secure adult self who's living in the present. It's coming from a young part of us who did not have access to resources and safety.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important because I think often we can have awareness of the patterns that we've got. We can do all the
Mm-hmm.
right logical actions to change them, and we can still stay stuck in them. And I think that's where the work has to go deeper with the somatic stuff. It's what I so enjoy about the shamanic work is you can take people on a journey to meet ancestors or guides or just uncover what's happening without actually having to look at any original traumatic events. We don't need to talk about what happened when you were 5. It's a almost a kind of, it's not bypassing, but I think the thing is healing doesn't have to take years. We've been
Mm-hmm.
schooled into with talk therapy that actually sometimes you can be in therapy for years and sometimes you can be in therapy for years and not get anywhere. I think healing is a lifelong journey. I don't think you ever get to a
Mm-hmm.
point where you go, cool, I'm all sorted. Nothing's going to bother me ever
Yeah.
again, because that's sadly not the human
Not
experience. But
right.
but the more healing you do, the more you equip yourself to cope better with new things that come up. But I love these modalities that just go much deeper than surface level. And I think often I have found my own experience has been with my own journey work and ancestral work, just having a bit of a gauge of, oh, this isn't actually mine
Mm-hmm.
is helpful because you can go, okay, actually, it's not me, it's not mine. I'm carrying something from somebody else. And I know what it is. I can do work to heal that.
Mm.
That was very, very freeing for me because sometimes you sit and go, geez, God, how can some one person have all of these things and be carrying so much stuff, and why is it so difficult? Actually, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not always yours.
Mm-hmm. yeah, like a lot of it can be ancestral, but some of it
Mm,
can be yours. And I
of
think
course.
it's also noticing like, hey, this has happened to me and
Yeah.
I can create something so much different and I can
Hmm.
create a new life for myself when I commit to trying something new, when I commit to doing these new types of practices. And I'm not saying I'm never triggered because that is just false, right? It just means that
Sorry.
yeah, like when we this is a lifelong work and I
Yeah.
don't really know when I would stop doing
Mm,
somatic therapy
mm,
personally
mm,
because with my past and with things I've gone through it's like new triggers are going to come up and when even just every time you expand if we're talking about our business, right?
mm.
Every time you expand, if our nervous system has flavorings of like fears of being seen, fears of visibility, fears of not being good enough, fears of I can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you expand in your business or anytime you
Mm,
get into a new relationship,
mm.
that's going to come up because our nervous system hasn't expanded its capacity yet.
Yeah.
And so it does not mean that, okay, I've healed the past and everything's dandy and I'm never triggered. It just means that, new things will come up. And that's also beautiful because that's showing, hey, I'm building my capacity. Because
Yeah.
when we're in survival, we're actually living a very, very small life because we
Yeah.
don't feel safe to expand and go toward that thing that we want if our nervous system believes it's coupled with threat and
Mm-hmm.
danger.
Yeah, yeah. What's the saying? New level, new devil. Which
Yes.
I have very much found to be true. And I think the other thing to say there, and I love that you brought that up, is often we end up stuck in a comfort zone. And actually, comfort zones are the most revolting places to be because you're just going round and round and round in a circle. But it's familiar. It's a round and round circle of shit that we know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it takes courage, and like you say, it takes stretching your capacities. Just step out of it a little bit, have a look around and go, oh, it's all fine. I can keep moving out of it, and retraining yourself to trust in your
Yes.
own ability to keep you safe as you expand and up level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's like, okay, maybe I can take this small step that takes me
Yep.
1% closer to my goal.
Yep.
And then it's showing my nervous system, okay, I didn't die. And then we can take the next step slowly and slowly over time. And this is how we will look back a year, 2 years, 5 years and be like, wow, I'm living a completely different life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell me, to bring us back to our podcast topic, we've meandered beautifully around lots of other places. I love it. If someone's coming to you with an anxious attachment style, where do you begin and what's the starting point for getting somebody to move themselves towards a more secure attachment style?
Yeah, so a starting point is something called vagus toning.
Hmm.
So, for those who aren't aware, we have something called a vagus nerve. And so, our vagus nerve it controls whether or not our fight or flight system gets turned on. But when we've been exposed to chronic stress or trauma, it gets stuck on. And so it does not go back into homeostasis. We get stuck in hypervigilance and anxiety in that fight or flight. So when we stimulate this nerve, it helps to send safety signals into our brain, into our body. And so vagus toning helps to start to turn off that alarm and just show the nervous system, hey, I'm safe in this moment. Even if that's for 5 minutes, I'm safe in this moment. And as we do that more and more, it's reconditioning the body, it's reconditioning the brain that safety is okay. And this helps to turn off that switch of something bad is about to happen. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is very common in anxious
Hmm.
attachers. And
Hmm.
then also nervous system regulation. So a lot of people can share a lot of things with nervous system regulation and say like just journal if you're overthinking. Absolutely not. If you're at a 7 out of 10 on anxiety, bitch, my body feels like a tiger is going to come get me. You think I'm going to be sitting in a sitting down meditation and journaling and that's going to help me? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so like even just starting to shake if the anxiety is so high, doing some shaking,
Yeah.
doing some swinging of the arms, we're
Yeah.
discharging this energy because anxiety is like there's too much energy. in the
Yeah.
system. And
Hmm.
then, right, if we want to talk about avoidant attachment
Mm.
or with anxious attachment, we can also experience signs of the freeze response or
Hmm.
depression. It's like nothing will ever get better. I'm always going to be stuck this way. My relationship is doomed. That's a sign that you're in freeze. And
Mm.
so, what we want to do is when we're in freeze, we don't have enough energy and we have lack of motivation. So, we want to start to upregulate and immobilize that energy. And so, I have specific tools for clients to help them
Hmm.
increase that energy and get out of
Hmm.
freeze. But we
Mm.
want to slowly, gently bring in movement.
Mm.
And then there's that anger response, right? And then the fawn response. People, and even like my own life, when I was seeing a talk therapist and I was dating that person that I was trauma bonded with, she's like, just set a boundary. Bitch, if my nervous system equates setting a boundary with a
Yeah.
fear of abandonment, and
Yeah.
my nervous system has linked this partner with my sense of survival and lifeline,
Yeah.
my nervous system is not going to feel safe to set a boundary.
Yeah.
So I also share specific tools to work with the fawn response because that's a big one for people who are anxiously attached. So
Yeah.
those are like the first beginning steps of teaching clients how to regulate their nervous system
Yeah.
so that they are not dependent on a partner or a toxic, emotionally unavailable person to regulate their nervous system and make them feel better because we can already do that from within. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, bringing safety to the body with vagus toning as well.
Yeah, and I love all of that, and none of it involved having a conversation about anything. And
No.
I think that's the important thing of a lot of people are numb from the neck down, I think, because
Hmm.
we're not taught to be in touch with our intuition. We're not taught to be in touch with our somatic signals, because invariably our body knows before our mind does what's happening for us, whether we're safe or not. So I imagine teaching people to sit with this is what it feels like to be calm and safe and actually lean into that if you're somebody for whom safety was intermittent or maybe you've never felt safe.
Yes. 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 And I want to add to the point of suppressed emotions because you brought that
Hmm.
up.
Mm.
It is, and that's something that was my issue. Like people are
Mm.
like, "Oh my God, like I'm so sensitive." Like, mer, mer, mer. I was the opposite. Now I'm definitely a bit more sensitive, but
Mm.
before then I was suppressed as hell because
Hmm.
I had a narcissistic father. I have a brother with autism who has a high level of demand for like
Mm.
care. And
Mm.
so for me, I learned I need to be small. I can't add to the chaos. My distress adds to already so much distress. So let me just be as small as possible. Let me stuff down my needs. Let me stuff down my boundaries because it wasn't safe for me. It wasn't
Yep.
safe for me to emote. And so a lot of people, it's first starting to build that awareness, like what's
Mm.
actually happening in my body and bringing that awareness because I was dissociated for years. I it was a big, big issue.
Mm.
And so these are all just parts that our nervous system learned to protect us. Um, yeah, and it's like, of course, it would be unsafe to share emotions if that was linked with danger or abandonment. And having
Yeah.
compassion with yourself if you relate with anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or struggle with dissociation or freeze or chronic anxiety.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a big thing, isn't it? And that's something I hope people take away from this is having compassion for yourself and
Hmm.
remembering that what we're talking about today are not personality traits, they're behavior
Hmm.
patterns. They're behavior
You got
patterns
it.
you've learned, they're behavior patterns you've engaged in to that your mind and body have used to keep you safe. They're not character flaws. And you
Hmm.
can do the healing work, you can kind of take the action steps, you can do the work to change them. Because I think a lot of people end up taking on board like it's me, there's something wrong with
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
is not it's not the case. It's not the case.
Correct.
And of course, the more work you do on your own well-being and your own attachment style, the less likely you are to end up repeating, because often, and I think I speak from experience, unfortunately, seeking out partners who remind you of parents to create the familiarity of your childhood because it doesn't feel good, but it feels safe to come back to that comfort zone analogy. We know how to cope in dysfunction, and we often don't
Mhm.
know how to cope in a healthy relationship. One of the things that somebody said to me was a man who treats me really well and treats me like a princess is like boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bad boy who treats you like absolute shit, that's who I want because we've got this attachment style running that's how you're programmed.
Yeah, and it all comes down to something called neuroception. Because just like you said with the familiarity, if our nervous system learned inconsistency, abandonment, not being seen, unavailability, that's safe. That's what my
Yeah.
nervous system deems safe. So this is why you feel safe with the emotionally unavailable toxic partner, but
Mhm.
you feel the ick by someone who's healthy and secure. It's
Yeah.
literally that because your nervous system does not believe that it's safe
Yeah. Yeah.
based, and it's completely unconscious. Like you're straight up not choosing it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And then you sit and go, why is this happening to me again?
Hmm.
So there is the work, is the somatic work, the nervous system work, which leads us beautifully into Valerie, can you share a little bit about the free masterclass you've got, speaking of unavailable partners, because you have just
Yes.
the thing for people who are anxiously attached and go for avoidant people.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for segueing into this. So my masterclass teaches you how to rewire this neuroception and rewire this response. Um, so what this helps you to do, and I literally guide you through a brain spotting where we help you notice and release the trauma of that pull toward unavailable partners and help rewire your nervous system for safety, for abundance, for unconditional love. That's all the same in your nervous system. It's been wildly transformational for the participants who have come. And it's typically like brain spotting is the thing that I only do with one-on-one paying clients.
Mhm.
So I highly recommend if you're listening to this, get in there ASAP because it's basically a free brain spotting session. And then there's also EFT tapping in there to heal your fear of abandonment. That also really goes into that pull toward emotionally unavailable partners. So I highly, highly, highly recommend you join in on that. It's going to change your dating life forever.
I love it. Brilliant. I'm going to link it in the show notes. Valerie, how can people get hold of you if they want to connect with you on socials or online? How can they do that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma. So they can do that on Instagram. My handle is Heal with Val, HEAL with VAL on Instagram. Or you can follow along on my podcast where I have experts, thought leaders, different guides in this space, and we talk about emotional healing, attachment styles, how to build healthy relationships after trauma on my podcast, the Anxiety Recovery Podcast with Valerie Rubin. So I'd love to have you
Amazing.
there.
Amazing. I will put all of the links in the show notes so everybody can come and find you. Valerie, thank you. This has
Wonderful.
been a really insightful, brilliant conversation. I've loved it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. I will see you again same time next week. Bye for now.